Hello, welcome. We're going to give folks a moment to sign on and then we'll get started. Hi, folks. Welcome. We'll get started in just a minute. We're going to give everybody a moment to log on. All right. Well, hello, welcome. Good evening here from Pittsburgh. It's nice to see some repeat folks. It's nice to see some first-time attendees on this webinar, but thank you for joining us for the Tartan Family webinar series. My name is Julie Schultz. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Associate Dean for First Year Orientation and Family Engagement here at Carnegie Mellon. And we're really excited to be back for our latest edition of the Tartan Family webinar series. As many of you know who are repeat attendees, we offer these webinars once a month for our parents and family members to bring together campus partners and offices who offer programs and resources that are relevant to our students and our families, and to make sure that you have access to the information and the people who are doing wonderful things here at the university and on behalf of all of your students. So this is our final webinar of the 2021-2022 academic year. We're pleased that you have all taken some time to join us tonight, and we're excited to continue this program and offer a great slate of webinars as we go into next academic year as well. So tonight I am joined by three of my wonderful colleagues here at the university who work in our Office of International Education and oversee Carnegie Mellon study abroad programs. And so you are in the right place if you are hoping to learn more about study abroad and the options that your students have available. And coming out of the pandemic, we are really excited to be able to get back to a more fulsome slate of the programs that we have. So before we get started, I have just a couple of quick housekeeping tips. So we are in the webinar format tonight. You all can see and hear us as presenters. Sadly, we cannot see and hear you as the attendees, but we do have the Q&A button enabled. So if you have any questions that come up throughout the presentation, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A, which we'll be monitoring. And there will be time at the end of the presentation for us to do some questions and answers live as well. So feel free to help us understand what needs to be clarified and to pop those questions into the Q&A. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to our first presenter, Chris Manand, who is the Associate Director for Study Abroad and Exchange Programs in our Office of International Education. So Chris, take it away.
Great, thanks, Julie, and great to see everybody here as well. As Julie mentioned, I'm the Associate Director in the Office of International Education for Study Abroad, and I feel our webinar right now is very timely as the world is beginning to open up again during this pandemic. So we're really glad to be here to presenting Study Abroad in this family webinar series as well. I am a Pittsburgh native. I actually lived here, and when I went away to college, I left for about 20 years, and I came back to Pittsburgh, but going abroad during my college experience was my first time abroad. I studied abroad many years ago in Russia, actually, and then did my graduate school in London, and then lived before I moved back to the Pittsburgh area in the Netherlands. So I had a wonderful experience internationally, and now love to live vicariously through students, hear about their experience. We have a wonderfully international campus, and it's great to see so many students here also take advantage of international opportunities and work with them. So really glad to be here as well. We have some slides that we'll be showing, but first I want to introduce, let my other colleagues introduce themselves as well. So I'll let JC introduce herself.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris. So Echo, thanks for being here with us this evening. We're glad to have you join us. My name is JC King. I'm the Assistant Director of Study Abroad at Carnegie Mellon. Chris and I have both been at the university for a while now. I'd say around a little over 14 years. And so I've spent most of that time working with study abroad students in the Office of International Education. Myself, I studied abroad for a semester in Salamanca, Spain, when I was a junior in college. That was my first experience overseas. overseas. I had been to Niagara Falls with family during my childhood, but that was the extent of my international experience before I got bitten by the travel bug in college, and have since, I would say, in my personal and professional life, had some opportunities to travel abroad again, once with a group of students at Carnegie Mellon, which was a great experience, but we really enjoy working with all of your students on campus. And yeah, look forward to sharing some more information with you here shortly. So I will turn it over to Tess.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Tess Thrower. I am a study abroad advisor at Carnegie Mellon University. I am actually going into my second month here. So I just finished my first month at CMU. So I'm excited to be here. I was previously an advisor at another institution for about 8 years, advising study abroad students. I'm the same as all of my other colleagues. I traveled abroad first when I was getting my bachelor's degree, and I studied in Limerick, Ireland, just as a traditional semester abroad student. And then when I went on to get my master's degree, I decided to do something a little less traditional and did an internship abroad in Alcalá, Spain. So that was my second overseas experience, and then continued traveling through my career as a study abroad advisor as well. So I'm so excited to be here, and thanks for joining us.
Great. So we have some slides that we're going to be sharing with everybody. So I will pull these up now, so we can go a little bit more into detail and show you about some information about study abroad. And I will say as well, while we've got these slides that we'll be presenting, feel free to check out the study abroad website as part of CMU's general website for a lot of information as well. We've got good photos, other links there also that you can find information. So I've got a brief slide that tells you a little bit about our agenda today. Give you an introduction about what study abroad is at Carnegie Mellon. We'll talk about then the specifics, the who, what, where, and when students should be planning and how to do so. We'll talk a little bit about our CMU Cutler campus, which is a wonderful opportunity for an undergraduate CMU education abroad. We'll talk about some different program types and enrollment, because we do have a very open process for study abroad. So how do students narrow down where they want to go? We'll talk about payment for study abroad. We know that can be an obstacle for many students, wondering how that works. And so we'll talk about that so that it doesn't have to be an obstacle. And then we'll leave you with a timeline and Q&A, that something that your students can kind of be ready for to plan for their next steps as well. So first of all, study abroad at Carnegie Mellon isn't just study. We're working with students on finding that study semester abroad, but we're also looking at opportunities for working, internship, volunteering, and doing research abroad. And in many cases, students are looking to do a multitude of these opportunities as well. They're involved in campus organizations, they're volunteering as well as studying, maybe they're an athlete. When they go abroad, they may want to take advantage of those similar opportunities. So that's what we're looking at when we're meeting with students. So we really enjoy our one-on-one opportunities of meeting with students to find out what they're really looking into and continuing that abroad as well. So students come to us for a variety of different opportunities as well. So we're always glad to share that with students, that we can work for them for a variety of different opportunities. When we're meeting with students, we always want them to realize, rather than just a location that might be an interest that they've been looking to go to for many years, there's basically, we like to say, 4 main values of study abroad that students will receive by having that international experience. These are things that are going to help them professionally and personally in their next steps in their career. Academically and intellectually, they're going to be learning in a different capacity than they're accustomed to here at CMU and Pittsburgh as well. A good example we always like to say is many institutions in Europe, for instance, the only grade is the final exam. So students, rather than being assessed here with homework, with quizzes, with presentations, the final grade might only rely on that exam. So students realize a lot more may rely on their shoulders in learning the material and collaborating and taking advantage of office hours and group presentations that they're in their group colleagues, so that they're ready then for those exams as well. Likewise, we know this is different when we have exchange students coming to Pittsburgh as well. They're getting used to the more assessment that we're used to here in the US type of education. Professionally, going abroad is a wonderful opportunity to create a whole network of new contacts. Students meet new colleagues. The students they're sitting beside in their classes might be professionals they'll be collaborating with in the years to come. Likewise, it's their faculty who are teaching abroad also are wonderful individuals to write references for graduate school, for employment as well. So it's also nice to have those professional links because employers later on really values seeing an applicant who's had that international experience. They have good competencies. That leads into the personal values that a study abroad experience provides. That confidence, flexibility, independence that students are able to take on by having that international experience really builds character as well. And lastly, as I said already, that the professional experiences are valued by employers. Intercultural competence is one of the things that why employers really value that experience when students are going abroad. Graduate schools are the same way. Having that international experience really just lets students know that they can not only travel, but they can act professionally, succeed in an international environment. So it's always, these are things when we're meeting with students, we're talking about ways that these experiences, they should be looking at these experiences when they're planning on where they want to go and what they want to do abroad, see how it's going to fit into their career plans and next steps as well after graduation. So the next couple of slides I have talk a little bit about the details. I love looking at these statistics. It's always fun at the end of the year to see, overall where our students have gone, what they've done. I will give a caveat. The statistics we're about to show are from the 2018-2019 academic year, which is our last full year abroad pre-COVID. We did have students going abroad in the fall and spring academic year of 1920, but of course things were cut short in March of 2020. So going back to the 2018-19 year, which is what we're looking to go to as well. So we typically have about 600 plus students going abroad. And this is across majors. So there's not one major that is better fit for going abroad for a semester than others. And definitely a semester abroad is possible for everybody on campus. And then there's other periods. That students can go abroad, summer, winter break, perhaps as well. And I will say this, even if you're a chemical engineering student, going abroad for the year is actually even easier than going for a semester. So there's a possibility for everyone to have that opportunity to go abroad. This shows you by college, and I'll explain some of our acronyms as well. That you'll see we've got a broad range of students going abroad. So TEPR CFA is College of Fine Arts, so that's drama, music, art, architecture as well, design. For our engineering as well, you'll see down at the bottom, CMU are students who are, let's say, BXA students, so Bachelors of Humanities and Arts, Computer Science and Arts, Science and Arts. Students with perhaps self-defined majors as well. Dietrich College of Humanities, Heinz is graduate programs, and then our Mellon College of Science is MCS, and SCS is our School of Computer Science. Now, you'll see we did include Heinz, which is graduate programs, and TEPR also. Those numbers really include a lot of graduate students. But the reason we want to include those is, especially during this time of COVID, where students maybe have not had the opportunity to go abroad during their undergraduate year, or are not go abroad maybe as much as they wanted to. Graduate opportunities do prevail, and that's something for students to be aware of. And we want to show those in our numbers as well, that graduate students do have the opportunity to go abroad. So TEPR, our MBA program, has a wonderful opportunity, for instance, in the 2-year MBA program, to finish their MBA abroad in the last quarter. So just letting students know that there are graduate possibilities as well. So by term, as I said, a semester for every major is definitely possible. And we love working with students to find that longer time going abroad. But there are other periods of time that are possible and enjoyable for students to find an opportunity to fit for them. And I will say, outside of just a semester abroad, there are students who go abroad multiple times. So they might go, let's say, summer after their freshman year, and then maybe a semester during their sophomore or junior year, and then perhaps winter break or spring break their senior year. And that's wonderful to see students have that opportunity for a multitude of experiences. You'll see summer and spring break are rather large experiences. One of the reasons is first of all, for summer, it's a great time to fit a variety of different opportunities. So you could be a mechanical engineering student with a minor in business, but let's say you've always wanted to do a drama classes and you can't fit them in here. You can do those over the summer. The interesting about summer too is there's different timelines as well. So summer could be a 2-week program, it could be a 12-week, so that fits as well. Spring break is typically a lot of our student organizations or faculty-led spring classes that have a travel component over the spring break. So that's a really popular time. We have some wonderful service groups on campus, global brigades, Alternative Break. I'm trying to think of some of the others that travel abroad. And those are wonderful service groups that meet all year working with a international community partner and then travel over the spring break opportunity. So just wanted to show some of these different time periods that are possible for students to take advantage of a broad experience. If a semester isn't something that a student is interested, we're still looking forward to working with them and finding some different opportunities that do fit. And the last thing I wanted to show for our data is our region. So this pie chart is probably typical for many US institutions about where their students are studying abroad. Europe has been the largest draw, and it typically goes back. I will say we will see our numbers from Asia and Latin America growing every once in a while as well. So that's nice to see. This year was typically a strong European year, 2018-19 as well. One of the things I will mention for Oceania, that is Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, as well as a location also. One of the things that makes our pie chart a little different than other campuses you might see in the US is the Middle East. Our numbers are a little bit larger because we do have a campus in Doha, Qatar. So it's always nice students can go there for a CMU education. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to my colleague, JC, who will talk a little bit further about our campus in Doha.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris. And I was putting it in the chat, a link. So I know Chris mentioned on the last slide about some of the student organizations that travel abroad over spring break. So I sent a link to our SLICE website, a certain section that highlights, if you scroll to the bottom and click through it, references some of the organizations who have traveled abroad in years past, in case that's something of interest that you want to review in the future. But okay, sorry, back to CMUQ. And so, excuse me, hopefully some of you are familiar with this already. You might be familiar with the fact that we have a campus in the Middle East, in Doha. But so if you're not, we do have a campus in Doha, Qatar. Part of, I should say, CMUQ, as we call it, is really within Education City. And so within Education City in Doha, Carnegie Mellon has a presence. We have a building, but students, or I should say, but there are also a number of other universities that also have campuses. You can see on the right-hand side of your screen, Virginia Commonwealth, Texas A&M, Northwestern, and Georgetown. So our Carnegie Mellon campus in Doha, it really, it's a great chance for students. It's a possibility really to enroll there for a full 4-year degree. So we do have some students enrolling and graduating from CMUQ with a bachelor's degree in one of these 5 academic disciplines that you see on the screen. So there are full majors that students can, again, earn in 4 years at the CMUQ campus in biological sciences, business administration, computational biology, computer science, and information systems. That being said, what's nice about having this campus is that we can have students from the Carnegie Mellon Qatar campus come to Pittsburgh for a semester. We also have students from Pittsburgh choose to go to CMUQ for a semester. So certainly if your student is majoring in one of these 5 areas, it would really be a very seamless process for them to spend a semester at CMUQ. All of the classes, the curriculum, the degree is the same. So it really is as simple as when a student is registering for classes, instead of finding and registering for Pittsburgh-based courses, they are looking to register for Doha-based courses. And then also I should mention that students, our CMU students, have the opportunity to cross-enroll and maybe take a class at one of the other 4 institutions that I mentioned, located in or located within Education City. Also, I'll mention I recently, actually just this past week, was working with an engineering student who was interested in going to CMU Qatar for next fall. So just because potentially your student is not majoring in one of these 5 academic areas doesn't mean that they could not go to our Qatar campus for a semester if they're interested. They just might need to be, creative in thinking through the types of courses that they're looking to take, and maybe think about that cross-registration option, or looking to fulfill maybe some breadth requirements, that sort of thing. So if you can go to the next slide, Chris. I mentioned here, the opportunity to go for a full academic semester to our Qatar campus. There's also a really terrific opportunity that's been offered over the years for students to travel to either the Pittsburgh campus or to our Cutter campus over spring break. This is a program that's called IMPACT. We say IMPACT with a Q. It stands for Initiating Meaningful Pittsburgh and Cutter Ties. And so this is a great opportunity. It's been run through the dean's office, the undergraduate dean's office, on the Pittsburgh campus. And so students are able to apply to be a part of this program. We've had students as early as their first year go, up through, some upperclassmen who have participated as well. And students submit an application online explaining a little bit about their interests and what they would like to do to try to bridge the two campuses. There's typically in years past, a cohort of anywhere maybe between 8 to 10 students from Pittsburgh who are selected to go to Cutter over spring break, and about the same number of students who would come to Pittsburgh. What's nice is that the spring breaks typically are back-to-back weeks. So usually what happens, a cohort of students from Doha might come to Pittsburgh for a week. They get to sit in on classes, get to meet with students, really get to know Pittsburgh. And then the following week, the group of Pittsburgh students travels to Doha and participates again in classes, different cultural events, discussions. And so I should have mentioned also that this really isn't just an experience that includes travel over spring break. It also is really meant to be a longer standing program. So the group will really meet throughout the fall semester once they're selected, maybe meet on a weekly basis to get to know each other, to come up with some ideas for projects on how, again, they will build those connections between the two campuses. Chris and I have both been fortunate to have the opportunity to travel with one of the impact groups over the years. Chris has gone twice. I have gone once. And so it was a really great chance for me personally to see the Cutter campus, to be able to relay that information to students, but to also be a part of that experience with our undergraduates. They've done some really great things and have made some really great connections. I will mention that this program, so our hope is for next year, thinking, as we move through the pandemic, so hopefully for next year, which would be, I guess, spring break of 2023, the thought is that, we will have a cohort that goes out in spring break 2023. The deadline is typically early to mid-October. So it's something to mention to your students if they're interested in applying. Oftentimes there are information sessions early on in the fall semester to get some more information. And this is also a nice chance for students. Sometimes they get a little bit of an experience over spring break and then decide that they want to go back to the Cutter campus for a full semester in the future. So yeah, we can go to, let's see, the next slide. Let's see, okay. And so also want to kind of, I guess, back up. So I mentioned the Carnegie Mellon Cutter campus. So in that instance, that really is the one specific instance where we have a full Carnegie Mellon campus. However, we do have a fairly open study abroad policy. So Chris mentioned earlier that, we view study abroad as including research, volunteer, service learning, interning abroad, studying abroad. So lots of options. We typically, when we meet with students one-on-one, we'll talk through different program types, different options for students. So I will mention, we'll talk about this later in the presentation, but we advise on a college model. So, if Chris is advising students in the College of Fine Arts, or I'm advising students in the Dietrich College of Humanities and Social Sciences or the Tepper School of Business, we kind of have a sense from working with our specific academic departments that, sometimes a certain semester works better for one academic discipline than another, but ultimately want to share that there are a really wide range of programs. So sometimes students go for a full semester. Sometimes students are looking to do a summer opportunity, maybe anywhere between 3 weeks to 10 weeks, the spring break opportunities that we've touched on. And then depending on the duration of the break between semesters, we have had some students go on winter break experiences, maybe a 10-day type of opportunity where they can get credit for one class. Also, I guess I would mention, when we're meeting with students one-on-one, we try to talk through, what are their goals? What type of program are they looking for? Are they looking to focus solely on academics? Are they looking to, combine academic coursework alongside an internship? That sort of thing. Those are some of the questions that we'll ask. I should mention that we do have some students who choose to directly enroll at a university abroad. So sometimes students might decide, especially if they're fluent in a foreign language, or maybe if they're traveling to an English-speaking country, they might decide, I'm going to apply directly to a university abroad, be considered a visiting study abroad student there for the semester, and that is perfectly fine. We have many students who do that. We also have a number of students go abroad through what we would call a study abroad program provider or a study abroad organization. Essentially, there's quite a wide range of them. I would say if you go onto our website and click around a little bit, you'll see a lot of acronyms. Chances are those acronyms are study abroad program providers. You have, IES abroad, CIEE, which is the Council for International Educational Exchange, or ISA, International Studies Abroad. Those are just a few of many, I will say. But what's nice is sometimes students, especially if they're going to a country where they don't speak the local language, but they're interested in taking their classes there, maybe classes taught in English, sometimes students will apply. In my case, for instance, I spent a semester, I mentioned, in Salamanca, Spain, but I submitted my application through one of these third-party providers who then accepted me for the study abroad program, helped me register for my classes, arranged my housing. So in my case, because I was studying a language, I really wanted to do a homestay and live with a host family because that made sense for me. It doesn't make sense for everyone. And so working with a program provider, they can help to place you in either a homestay or an apartment or a residence hall. And so they're really there to kind of, add some logistical support, have an office on the ground with local staff. So again, wanted to mention that those are just a few of the things that we'll talk with your student about when we meet one-on-one, or if we come in to speak at a classroom. We really, again, like to look at goals. So, in my case, I mentioned learning a language. So if that is a goal that a student has, we might, say, talk through certain program options that could be a good fit. Other students might, again, be looking to focus on more research or internship options. So depending on the information we get from your student, we will hopefully be able to point them in a certain direction of at least where to start as they begin their search, knowing that they do have so many options. And then I touched on the housing already. There are certainly a variety of options to choose from depending on where a student is looking to go. So if you can go to the next slide, Chris. And so I guess I would say that, regardless of which type of program a student chooses, whether it's a direct enrollment, whether it's a study abroad program provider, maybe, an exchange program, lots of different terms, students are always enrolled at Carnegie Mellon during their time abroad. So students should not have to take a leave of absence to study abroad for a semester, definitely not for a summer. Wanted to mention that. Students are typically working with their academic advisor, which I'll talk about actually a little bit later in the presentation, but typically working with their advisors, their academic departments, to have their courses approved. It's possible to have courses that might count toward a major, courses toward, a minor, for instance, maybe electives, breadth requirements. So lots of options. And really, the earlier you're planning, the easier it is to kind of piece your schedule together to determine what makes the most sense. And then we have QPA, frozen while abroad, which, just to mention, so, quality point average, you might hear GPA for grade point average. But so when a student goes abroad for a semester, whatever GPA they have, so say right now, if a student, ends up with a certain GPA at the end of this spring semester, and then they go abroad in the summer or next fall, when they return from their international experience, they will still have that same Carnegie Mellon QPA. So the point is, the only time when actual letter grades from abroad are factored into a student's QPA is if they go to another Carnegie Mellon campus, if they go to our campus in Doha and Qatar. Otherwise, students are still taking courses abroad for a letter grade, but when they transfer the units back, or the credits, we use units, it really would just list the student's course name and the number of units on their transcript. So students do still have to earn, certain equivalent thresholds abroad. So maybe earning the equivalent of a USC as in TAT or higher in order to get those credits, those units, or, a USB or higher for econ and mathematics courses. So wanted to mention that as well. And so I thought before I will pass it back to Chris, I was looking to see, questions we can, I think one of the questions Chris is about to answer here shortly.
Yeah,
so
I
maybe
was,
I'll
I was,
turn it back to you.
answering one, JC. I left two for you though, because they kind of had to do with what you're talking about. So one of them is their son is thinking about taking comp sci courses this summer in Pittsburgh, but he wasn't able to get an internship. Would he be able to go to CMUQ instead and take courses there over the summer?
Yeah, good question. I was going to say, Chris, as you're nodding, do you want to chime in about that?
Yes, I can. And
Sure,
it's
thanks.
an interesting summer in Qatar. We can also mention about this as well. So definitely yes. And I'll mention broadly, yes, that is always possible for summer. So we have a lot of Qatar students who are coming here this summer and vice versa. So that is always a possibility. I will say this, we typically have more students from Qatar coming here because of the weather. It's just, 120 degrees sometimes in the summer, but we've had students do that. So that definitely is a possibility. This summer is unique. Now, the World Cup is happening in November in Doha, Qatar. So our Doha campus has switched their fall semester to start early, which means they're only doing a summer session 1. So depending on schedules, we typically Pittsburgh, their summer session 1 and 2, CMU Qatar does the same thing, but they're only doing summer session 1 this term because then in July, they are going to start the fall term. So, but it is definitely a possibility, just something to be aware of. It will be very hot. So,
yeah.
Anything
Okay.
else?
And then the other one I left for you, JC, was how do students that go on study abroad for spring deal with campus housing for the first half of the school year? And do you suggest students taking out of campus housing instead for the fall semester?
Yeah, that is a good question. And I could maybe just touch on housing as it relates to study abroad in general. So I would say, the good news, so typically we'll say if a student is going abroad in the spring, if that student lives within university housing, usually what would happen, I guess, sometime in the spring, if a student wants to live on campus in the fall, they are most definitely allowed to do that. They can go through the traditional or the typical, room selection process and have their housing assignment for the fall. Then in the spring semester, we actually work pretty closely with housing and dining with a number of different offices on campus. And so we ask students, so two things. Typically, when we're working with students, we host pre-departure sessions, which we'll touch on more. We do, reference to, or let students know that they should notify housing that they are not going to be there next semester, but we actually send a specific list of all of the students who will be abroad in the spring, just to make sure that they are pulled out of housing. So I would say the good news in that case is if a student would want to return to university housing, the following fall after their spring semester abroad, they are allowed to do that and they can come back into that university housing. I would say that is different than you may be familiar, at least I think historically, if a student after their first or second year decided to move off campus and live in one of the surrounding neighborhoods or communities, and then they decided to return to university housing, that was not guaranteed, but that is not the case with study abroad. So if a student is within the university housing system during or before their study abroad experience, they're guaranteed to be able to come back after the fact. And we do, so I'd say the flip side, for students who are going abroad in the fall, right? I'm thinking students who are going abroad in the fall, those students, if they choose to, are able to opt back into university housing in the spring, if that's something that they choose to do. I would say they wouldn't necessarily have maybe as strong or has high of like a preference for which location. It kind of depends on what's available. But I think in those instances, we oftentimes refer students to our colleagues in housing and dining if a student has any concerns and wants to talk through things in advance. We also have students, choose if they know in advance that they're planning to go abroad. We sometimes have students choose to live off campus that year, and then they'll work, to find someone to sublet, maybe a study abroad student who is going abroad in an opposing semester. That sometimes works as well. So there are some resources on the housing website where we've had students post that they're looking for a subletter, or if they're looking to sublet, when they return from abroad, that sort of thing. Yeah. Okay. So I'm looking here. Some other questions.
That was it for now.
Yeah, that sounds good.
The other ones we should be able to answer privately. So yeah.
Sounds good.
Well, perfect. Well, thanks for bringing those to our attention, Tess. And I'll move on to the next always fun topic of talking about paying for study abroad. But this is always, it's actually a nice thing to talk about because paying for study abroad can be actually a wonderful thing for us to share how this works. So the first part I'm going to talk about is paying for study abroad during a semester. So students going abroad for the fall or spring. So we realized when students started at Carnegie Mellon, they were going to be here for 8 semesters, possibly 10 if they were a Bachelor of Architecture program here for the 5th year. So students, students have their aid package or realize what they're paying each semester. So when students go abroad, we're working with them, as JC was talking about, we have a very open policy towards study abroad, but we are going to categorize students when they're going abroad for a semester as either an exchange student or a sponsored student, as we have listed here, or a direct pay student. One of those 3 categories is how students will be paying for the opportunity. So the first 2, these ones, students are paying through Carnegie Mellon. So we are charging CMU tuition if they're going on an exchange program, and we have an exchange partner abroad, and the student is paying tuition at that institution. Both students swap spaces to go on that opportunity. We have exchanges are set up academic reasons. So we have partners abroad that are like-minded. So either in the fields of engineering, let's say, or in drama, other sides like that. So it's a wonderful opportunity academically for students. Again, tuition is very easy as well. The next possibility is for sponsored students. In those cases, excuse me, JC, I may hand off to you. I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to need a glass of water, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, sure. No worries. Yeah. So I'll come back here. So I was going to say, so you mentioned, so for the next category, we'll stay on this slide here for a second. So like Chris mentioned, I'll kind of reiterate a slightly different way. So these 2 categories we have here, the exchange programs and the sponsored programs, both allow students, if they do have significant financial need, it gives students the option of paying through Carnegie Mellon. So Chris mentioned with the exchange programs, you have that no dollars are exchanging hands. We have each student paying their home institution and then they're trading places. Sponsored programs, which I won't do it now as I'm chatting, but I can put a link specifically to this in the chat here in a minute. But so for our sponsored programs, what's really nice, we have, I would say right now, maybe around 45 or so different programs that are on our list that students can choose from all around the world. If a student chooses from one of these sponsored programs, what would happen is they would still receive their Carnegie Mellon invoice as if they were going to be on campus, say for the semester that they're abroad, and then all of their financial aid is applied, and then our office would pay the invoice for the program abroad. I was going to say, Chris, if you can hear me, if you can click on the next slide, we'll kind of loop back to kind of a comparison, for these. But so I would say, are you okay if I do this slide here? Just while you're...
I can start if you want. I can go on.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's
I realize.
fine.
Thank you for taking over. That
Sure.
We always joke about that happening. So
yeah, no worries.
No, JC, and that's smart to say. And I would say too, if I say anything to jump in, because payment can be a really interesting situation too. So the last category that students can take advantage of is paying directly abroad. And this is a great opportunity for students who don't have CMU financial aid. It allows students to pay whatever the cost of the university abroad or the program providers. And that's why we have those logos down below, or what they call program providers. They're basically third parties that offer programs abroad. And a lot of our students are taking advantages of these. One option that I'll mention that you may be aware of as family members for students in high school is AFS, which works a lot with exchange at the high school level. AFS acts as an intermediary between high schools abroad and high schools in the US. The program providers at the bottom are also offer these types of options. And so a lot of our students are taking advantage of these programs, these program providers to go abroad as well. If they're paying directly, they're going to pay that program abroad's tuition, room, board, et cetera. They're not paying it to CMU. So students never need to pay tuition, room, or board twice. So they're doing it, it's a separate opportunity. Students going abroad, if they have federal and state and loans, are able to use those towards that cost. So that's another nice option. You're not eligible for CMU funding during that trip. And so when we're meeting with students and talking about their goals, all those reasons, we're talking about their financial package as well. So we're looking to that to see if they do not have a large amount of Carnegie Mellon financial aid, going abroad externally can be quite financially beneficial as well to be able to do that. for students who do take advantage of this, and let's say they did have a $2,000 CMU loan, CMU aid scholarship or a grant of $5,000 from CMU, and they decided to study abroad and not use it for that term, when they come back in the spring, that $5,000 will still be there. It's not removed from the remainder of their college experiences. We do want students to know they should still complete the FAFSA if they're going abroad for the next academic year or a semester. That still kind of goes in forward as before. But otherwise, this can be a really nice opportunity for students looking at their aid package. So overall, what we will do is meet with students to talk about their opportunities, whichever fits best, going directly for payment, if that works well, or using all their aid and looking at the sponsored and exchange programs financially, if that's a better option. Stacey, do you have anything to add for that?
I don't think so. I know on the, not really. I think the next slide, I know we have a pro and con list that maybe we could kind of talk through. I thought before, maybe before we go on, someone did ask if we, work closely with other programs in addition to, say, like some of the acronyms and the program providers that you had on the slide before. Someone asked about, are they all study abroad program providers like IES, IFSA, or would you maybe work with NYU, Northwestern, UPenn? And I would say, we do, because we have such an open study abroad policy, we have had students go on NYU programs abroad. That is certainly permissible. I would say the distinction here, as Chris was talking through the payment options, is, some of those programs, while our students could go anywhere, in the instance of NYU, for instance, that would be what we would consider an external program, which is what Chris was just talking about, where a student would be paying NYU directly. So that's really where there is the distinction that, you would need to look, if you do need to pay through Carnegie Mellon and use all of their financial aid, you would be looking at kind of that more finite list of programs that we have those billing arrangements and those partnerships with. But again, if you're paying directly to a program abroad, or if a program abroad seems less expensive, you are certainly allowed to pay that program abroad directly. And we would hope that you would do that if that makes sense financially for you. So yeah, I just thought I'd mention that because it kind of tied in with what you were talking about.
Yeah, and that's a really nice thing to mention as well, because we partner really closely too with our hub liaisons, which we mentioned on this slide as well. So JC, Tess, and I advise study abroad on a college model. So we each have our colleges that we advise by, and the hubs, so the financial services, the liaisons there do the same thing. So we work really closely with our hub liaisons, and in many cases we will have a conversation with your student as well as their hub liaison if there's any question about finances, maybe perhaps what aid can and cannot be used. We know sometimes students, our families might get the aid award and decide, okay, I'm not going to use my plus loan for this opportunity, for during the academic year, but you might have one eligible. So there's things like that it makes it really worthwhile to sometimes loop in them as well. One thing I'll mention really quickly too, what JC was saying, the pro and con list, it really does help a lot for students to make a pro and con list of costs, as well as those other goals, things, so they can decide their best option as well. When we say that a studying abroad program could be less expensive, and this is why I was saying that payment can be a nice opportunity, it can be less expensive. There are programs out there that can be about $20,000 for tuition in room. Tuition in room, as we know at Carnegie Mellon, can be quite a bit more than that as well. So that's what does make it a nice opportunity as well. So just wanted to mention that. Tess, were there any questions that came through?
Yes, we have one more that's a good one to answer live, and it is tuition costs are typically much lower for international programs. Will CMU charge CMU costs or decrease the tuition costs to match the international setting costs for exchange or sponsored programs?
Wow. So that's a good, kind of goes back to our talk before, but a good question to bring up. Yes, because institutions are less expensive abroad, if a student chooses to go there and it's not on our exchange list, they can, and if they're able to apply to that institution and be accepted there, they are eligible to pay that institution's cost if that's part of the program. Now, I will say this, one thing that we've seen is some institutions abroad may have a separate fee for study abroad than they do for their full degree seeking students. So that's something just to be aware of when you're when a student is looking at some experience as well. They might see a really low cost and be like, oh, I'm excited to go to that institution. But with them, we will check to make sure that that is a cost that's eligible for students coming for one semester of study abroad as well. So hopefully that helps answer a little bit, that students can can choose to pay that cost abroad. So the next slide, I will say, I'm just going to mention a little bit. I talked right now about semester study abroad, so fall, spring, or maybe the academic year, and how to pay for those things. So summer, it's a little bit differently. Whether students are going for taking a class maybe at their home city or going to NYU or UCLA here domestically in the United States, study abroad isn't really in the same realm as that. Students are paying that opportunity directly. It's not part of their 8 semesters at Carnegie Mellon or 10 for architecture students as well. So it's considered an external opportunity to go there. That being said, as I said, we work with hub liaisons. Students perhaps could use federal and state aid loans toward a summer experience if they're getting at least 2 classes, basically 18 units out of the way over the summer. So that is a possibility to use federal and state aid during that time. But otherwise, it's an added expense. So what are students doing? They're looking a lot at scholarships. And I'll hand it off to Jason now to the next steps. And these scholarships can run not just for summer, but winter break and spring break as well. So here, I'll forward the next slide and then hand it off to JC.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so like Chris mentioned, while, we do have many students who are so some going abroad in the summer specifically, but also during, potentially those break periods, I feel like what's nice, even though students don't traditionally receive a financial aid package during that time, a lot of scholarships organizations are aware of that, and therefore they oftentimes will target their study abroad scholarships specifically towards summer experiences or those short-term experiences. For instance, I realize this is a pretty long list here, obviously on the screen, so I'm not going to touch through everyone. But again, from our website, cmu.edu/study abroad, if you navigate to that page across the top, if you're looking at the navigation tabs, there is one section that says, or tab that says programs and funding. So if you navigate to the funding section in the future after the session, you can actually click through and read a little bit more about, I would say all of these scholarship opportunities and more, if that's something you're interested in. But I'll mention just through our office. So within the Office of International Education, we oversee a number of study abroad scholarships, specifically the Tartan Abroad Scholarship, the Tartan Abroad Fund. Again, we have 3 different deadlines throughout the year, and those are really geared towards students who are looking to have an experience abroad over winter break, spring break, or summer. So that's been a great option for students. We also promote the Global Engagement Scholarship, which is through our office, typically for students going abroad in the summer, looking to really immerse themselves in another culture, maybe a student who has not traveled abroad, in the past, for instance, and that tends to be a larger award, maybe around $4,000, where the Tartan Abroad Fund, it's less than that in a sense. It's meant to really, kind of offset the cost of a summer program. But some of the departments also offer some really terrific opportunities for funding. So if your student happens to be within the Dietrich College of Humanities and Social Sciences, or if they have a major or minor declared in modern languages, they actually have 2 separate avenues for funding, one through Dietrich, one through modern languages. And so we have seen students already, I've been copied on some award notifications from the Dietrich College. So we have students receiving those who are looking to go out this coming summer. So the CIT travel grant or our College of Engineering Dean's Office really offers awards. So if your student has a major, I believe major, maybe a minor as well within engineering, they're eligible for that. Even mechanical engineering kind of goes a step further to offer some funding for their students specifically. And then there are also some national awards. So just earlier today, we were talking about a student who is looking to go abroad and is applying to Japan for the summer and is applying for a Freeman Asia Award, which is pretty substantial. I think it could be up to $5,000. The Gilman Scholarship, it's also a national award, but in order to be eligible, students have to be a U.S. citizen who receives a federal Pell Grant. And if your student does receive a Pell Grant, they're eligible for that award. Again, could be up to $5,000 during the academic year, maybe up to $3,000 in the summer. And so even though some of these are national awards, I feel like we are definitely encouraging of our students and encourage them to apply, because we've had many students receive these awards over the years. So I think the key with scholarships is to really have students put themselves out there, invest, the time, because I think ultimately it will pay off. So again, just a quick snapshot, even though that was a lot, there's a lot of different options. I think the key is if students are looking far in advance, at least a year in advance, just to make sure they don't miss scholarship deadlines. So Chris, you can go to the next slide. And speaking of, planning a year in advance, like I mentioned, I was going to wrap up the presentation with a quick timeline. So someone I think asked this at one point, maybe in the Q&A, kind of as a follow-up, how far in advance should we be planning? Definitely start early. We have a session at orientation every year, so it's possible your student attended a first year or attended a study abroad information session during orientation. If they didn't, that is okay. But I would say there's never a time that's too early to meet with us. So we would encourage your student, maybe to send us an email or set up an appointment with us so that we can meet one-on-one to discuss some of the things you see listed here, their interest, comfort level. We will talk with students about their financial aid package. That's usually one of the first questions I ask when I meet with a student. And then we'll also talk through, how they should find a program and look to receive transfer credit. So you can go to the next slide, Chris. So we also, I should say that study abroad is very much a partnership between our office and your student's academic department. And so while we will work with students to help them, find a program that hopefully works well for them, work through the application process, it is very imperative that your student talk with their academic advisor to discuss their courses, their curriculum. Do they have certain prerequisites? Do they need to take classes in a particular order so that they can meet all of their graduation requirements and stay on track to graduate, within their 4 years or 5 years if it's architecture, right? And so we oftentimes will refer back and forth. So some students meet with us first, and then we refer to their advisor. Other times students, talk about study abroad with their academic advisor and then connect with us. Either is fine, but we really just want to make sure that we have that, kind of triangle of support between the student, us, and your academic and the academic department. You can head to the next slide, Chris. And so last thing I'd say, are thinking about a timeline for when students should apply. Typically, at the latest, students should be applying the semester before they go abroad, but a lot of times study abroad applications are available up to a year in advance. So what I would say, for say the students who were looking to go abroad this coming summer or next fall, a lot of those deadlines really ranged between March 1st and April 1st for summer or fall experiences. Right now, I'm meeting with a good number of students who are thinking about going abroad for spring 23, and a lot of spring deadlines will be around October 1st, give or take. And so I've been, again, for students who are thinking about going abroad in the spring, I've been encouraging them, if they're able to have some conversations now, maybe do a little bit of research over the summer. There's no reason a student could not apply sometime in the summer for a spring experience. It just helps them to plan a little bit further ahead. A lot of programs have rolling admission, so the sooner a student applies, the sooner they'll hear back. And then the semester before a student goes abroad, we will ask all students to attend a mandatory pre-departure orientation session with our office. We'll talk through some of the registration materials, the process to get students registered in our database for study abroad, but talking through also logistics, health, safety, money, and banking abroad, cell phones, lots of things. And so that is something right now in the month of April, we've been hosting those sessions for students who are going abroad in the summer or fall. And then again, I mentioned, just to kind of reiterate, applying for scholarships. Sometimes the scholarship deadlines are right around the same time as program deadlines, but they can also be sooner. And so some of the academic departments, within, say with Dietrich, for instance, they might have a once a year deadline. And so it really is imperative for students to be, keeping up with the website and meeting with us just to make sure that they don't miss anything. Yeah, Chris, you can go to the next slide. Yeah, and so it's kind of to wrap up, mention, we are encouraging students to continue planning amidst the pandemic. We feel very, I would say, fortunate. We're happy that things are moving in the right direction after study abroad and just travel, was suspended for so long. We did have a smaller cohort of students abroad last semester. We have students abroad this current semester as well, and then many, many more students looking to go abroad here in the near future. And so we've really been working with students one-on-one, doing a lot of research about the countries, the locations specifically where our students are looking to go, but have encouraged students really just to have contingency plans abroad, but also at home. So, for students going abroad next fall, that might even involve registering for classes at CMU next fall, and the chance things should shift or anything should change. But it's really an ongoing dialogue, really encouraging students to be in touch with their program provider or with their study abroad, their university abroad, just so they're aware, of any sort of restrictions or requirements. So, yeah, okay. And then I was going to say, I think that was our last slide. So I know that some questions came in, and I know that Tess, I think, has been monitoring them and has likely asked some, but we thought we would open the floor to questions now. Tess, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to chime in with initially while folks are coming up with questions.
Sure. Yeah. And Chris and you kind of were covering this and we were discussing that, but just in case anything you want to add, someone did ask, their daughter wants to go to EPFL in Switzerland, spring 2023. Is it still possible to get all planned this summer? So.
For spring 23, I would say short answer, yes. So that's good. Yeah. I would say, if the student hasn't asked us or hasn't met with us already, to maybe have them outreach or set up an appointment just to make sure we can get them attached to that specific program in our database so that they can go through the appropriate application process.
Yes, and I will send that link to the question actually as well. So to whoever asked that, I'll be sending that. And then we have a couple other that came in. And one of them is, does CMU have any plans to expand their university exchanges? It seems a small list compared to other colleges.
That's a good point. And I can mention that is something we've been asking. We are approached constantly, I would say, by new exchanges and always looking to new opportunities. One of the reasons that we typically may have a smaller number of exchanges than especially other European and other institutions is cost. So when we sign an exchange with an agreement with a university abroad, in order for us to make it a balanced exchange, so we can welcome students from abroad and send students from CMU, students are paying tuition to Carnegie Mellon to go there. Now, so that cost is one of the issues. Especially if that program abroad, since we have an open policy, our students could possibly go to that institution directly as well. If that program abroad's tuition is, let's say, $10,000, signing an exchange, now we're going to have students pay $27,000, $28,000 to go to that institution. So then what we see is students start to choose to go elsewhere. So that is one of the reasons. And it's an interesting conundrum to be in because we really might want to bring students from that institution to Carnegie Mellon, which is the reason you sign up for an exchange as well. But we realize financially, we have to look at that balance as well, because we have such an open policy and students could go elsewhere. If there's a financial incentive, that's a huge issue that students might be looking into for going abroad. So a very good question. But we are always looking and we're always reviewing, adding new exchanges as well. But otherwise, I would say financially, if students want to go to an institution that we don't have an exchange with, we'll talk to that institution and see if they have an open study abroad policy that they can go on.
Another good question, we keep using the word apply. What are they applying for, the study abroad program or the university they are going to attend?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I'll start and then Chris, feel free to chime in. So we are probably using that, have used it broadly. So I would say, it could be either. What I mean by that is so students, when a student is looking to go abroad, mention whether they decide to apply through a study abroad or to go through a study abroad program provider, or if they're looking to go directly to an institution overseas, either way, the student is going directly on to the University Abroad's website, or they're going online to the Study Abroad Program Provider's website, clicking Apply Now, submitting an application, uploading a transcript, maybe an essay, course preferences. They're doing that all with the program provider or the institution abroad. So in that case, they're being accepted to the Study Abroad program. There is not, we don't have like an internal study abroad approval or an application process through our office on the front end. So a student does not typically have to, apply through our office to be allowed to then apply directly to a university abroad. Oftentimes students are working directly with the program overseas, and then once they're accepted or once they're still waiting on a decision, at that point they would attend that pre-departure session with our office, and then we would get them registered in our database. So that part, that registration piece, the connection with Carnegie Mellon and registering a student for study abroad happens after a student has applied and been accepted to a program overseas. I would say the one I guess exception would be, so to mention the exchange program. So if a student did choose an exchange program, that is the one instance where they would actually initially apply through our office to be nominated for that exchange. But again, we're happy to speak more directly afterward, or one-on-one via email moving forward if that doesn't clear things up. Yeah. So Julie,
and then I'm going to skip over one.
Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead. No, I know we're close to time, so that's what I was just going to mention.
Yeah.
Let's see. Was there one more test that you think, or Julie, we can also try to chat via email?
Some of these. I could mention really quickly the departmental question. JC just mentioned that with the university-wide exchanges, you apply through our office. Someone wrote about this, the departmental exchanges. That's done that way as well. They just do it through the department instead of our office, and we guide to that same process. So a good question.
Yeah.
Yes, and I can answer a few of these privately as well, if that helps. The one question though, would it be too late to choose Doha campus for fall? I figured that'd be a quick answer.
Yeah, that's a quick one. It's possibly, we can check with our colleagues over there because it's our campus. We're really glad to talk with our colleagues. So if a student is interested, they're just going to have to move very quickly on that regard. So that's something that the students realize, we'll have to talk with them, and they're going to have to move quickly if they're interested in doing that, but it is possible. Just remember, the campus, they start in July and they're going to end in November if they're interested in going this fall. So something to be aware of.
Perfect. Well, I know there are a couple questions that are still outstanding that we'll be answering in the chat, and there are a few more coming in. If folks have additional questions after we wrap up tonight, please feel free to reach out directly to the study abroad team. Chris, you shared that email on the last slide. Do you want to reiterate it just once again for everyone still on the call?
Sorry, say that once more. I was reading one of the questions. Yes.
Yeah, just what the email is where folks can reach out after today.
I just put it in the chat. I was going to say, it's just, it's that go abroad at andrew.cmu.edu.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, perfect.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, all three of you, for being here tonight. So Chris, JC, Tess, we really appreciate your time. Thank you all, for parents and family members, the great questions that you submitted throughout. This was a really wonderful conversation. We're putting one last link into the chat, which is a quick survey about tonight's webinar. It also asks if there are future topics for webinars that you want us to explore for next academic year. So please feel free to help us brainstorm and to invite wonderful colleagues like these to be able to present and share their knowledge with all of you as the parent and family community. So thank you again. Have a wonderful evening and have a great rest of the semester to your students. And we'll hope to see you at some of these sessions next year. Take care, folks.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.